Arizona Cardinals. Red Sea, rise up. Los Angeles Rams. Let's go, Ramley. Seattle Seahawks. Let's go, 12, get loud. San Francisco 49ers. Home of the faithful. Quest for the West.
It is Quest for the West time. We are back at it again, baby. Work is not preventing me from being able to do my due diligence and duty, but we got Sam here from the Always Compete Seahawks podcast after a huge win for the Seahawks. And talk about a roller coaster of an NFC West the last few weeks with all the teams involved, from a huge win 2 weeks ago, Seattle against the 49ers. And I said this post game after the game, an inverse of 2019, the inverse goal line stand, where you have a D lineman batting the ball down at the line to get a big win for Seattle and keep them right completely in the playoff hunt. To this week, where the Arizona Cardinals lose to the Rams. The Seattle Seahawks get a big win against the Texans. The Niners have an overtime thriller against the Bengals. Everyone's feeling really good. And then all the news that comes out about the Rams and a bunch of their roster testing positive right before they're about to play you guys this week. After the win last week, or 2 weeks ago, against San Francisco, things were still a little dreary. You're still sitting at 4-8. You guys are still a ways back. After this win against the Texans, seeing the way things are going right now with the Rams, how are you feeling about the Seattle Seahawks' chances of getting into the playoffs?
Honestly, if you would have asked me after that Washington game how I would have been feeling, I would have said, well, there's realistically no chance that we make the playoffs. We're 3-8. What are we going to do? And then we go out and get a huge win at home versus San Francisco, which is big for a number of reasons. A, it keeps us alive. B, it gives us the season over you guys, just in case if anything comes down to it, which is, I guess, an added bonus. And it's a division rival. But the biggest point is that we didn't win at home all year, which is very un-Seahawk like. But we have not won a home game all year besides that game. Got the fans back into it. I was surprised to see how many people were out there supporting. It was very loud, which is very promising to see at a 3-8 record. And we played our hearts out, and this team is going to be playing with a lot of fire, a lot of passion. We beat the Texans this week to move to 5-8. And you talk about how with the Rams and what's going on there right now, Jalen Ramsey out this week because of a COVID positive test. You have, I believe, Odell Beckham out with a positive test. I think I saw that Jordan Fuller tested positive and went on the COVID list. Those are three pretty major starters right there. Just booted off this week, not for injuries, not for anything like that, because of COVID.
I have the full list right here for this game this week. In addition to Beckham, you have Terrell Burgess, defensive back. You have Bryson Hopkins, tight end. Juju Hughes, defensive back. Alaric Jackson, their offensive tackle. Sebastian Joseph Day on the interior. That's a big one.
Oh, that's a big one. I didn't know he tested positive. Wow.
Jordan Fuller, that's a big one. Defensive end Jonah Williams, Tyler Hall. Tyler Higbee was removed from the COVID list. And there has been no other updates on anyone else. So
and
the nine players were added.
The right tackle also got added to the COVID list. He got added a couple days back, I think. So he might have a chance to come off before the game starts or before the day of the game. But he's going to cut it close. He's going to cut it close for sure. So
Havestein, yes. Daryl Henderson is another one. Jalen Ramsey and Dante Dion. Those are the other guys as well that were added to that list. That is a lot of guys.
A lot of major starters. A lot of major 100%. Starters too. And
so, oof.
Yeah. And thankfully for the Seahawks, I'm going to do a big knock on wood here, but the Seahawks did not have any positive tests last year. We are very strict on what we do with our COVID rules. We are very, very strict. And I'm hoping that we can make it out unscathed through this week to go in what is nearly at full strength. Obviously, we don't have Jamal Adams. I imagine we'll touch on that at some point later in the episode, but we don't have Jamal Adams anymore. So it's important to win these games where your opponent is just totally beat up and might be totally, you have the best corner in football not playing, starting right tackle not playing, Odell Beckham Jr., who just had a pretty good game last night versus the Cardinals, not playing. They're starting running back, not playing. You have a lot of guys who are not going to play this week in a key, not only a division game, but a key game for the Seahawks in general, just to kind of stay afloat and stay with everybody else that's fighting for this spot, which I believe is like 6 teams right now or something ridiculous like that. There's, I believe, it's like Washington, Atlanta, even like Carolina and all them, they can still technically get in.
Carolina, Philly, Saints, all those teams are still definitely in the hunt, in the picture.
Yeah. I will say, like the Saints, they're kind of barely treading water after the whole Jameis Winston injury, and Trevor Siemian and Taysom Hill just cannot get the job done. They got a nice win versus the Jets, but I mean, grain of salt, because
here's the good news. For Seattle, one of the things you had talked about and mentioned, right, was the amount of teams that are in the thick of it, and then just what that means for you guys. Sitting at 5-8, you're a game back of a lot of these 6 and 7 teams, so you got to either get even with them, so get to tied, or get over on them. That would mean winning out. So getting to 9-8 would be huge, because that would guarantee you guys at least a share of it. But there are a few teams that you guys don't hold the tiebreaker over, the head-to-head tiebreaker, and that's the first thing that they're going to this year, which I, as a fan of football, I enjoy that, because I think, the times you play teams and lose to teams, that should dictate and determine some aspect of something. You playing someone head-to-head should have weight, and now they've finally added that into the tiebreaker rules. So you guys have a loss to the Washington football team. You also have a loss to a team like the Minnesota Vikings. So I imagine those are 2 teams you want to see continually losing. And you had brought up 2 teams. I think this is very interesting. You brought up the Washington football team, and you brought up Philadelphia, 2 teams sitting at 6 and 7. They still have to play each other twice.
Yeah, and that's so big.
If Philly gets 2 wins over the Washington football team and drops 2 wins over everyone else, then it's going over. I think they still play the Giants and they play the Cowboys. If they lose to the Giants again, they lose to the Cowboys for a second time. They beat Washington. They beat Washington twice. They're going to go 500 in division, because that's what it's going to come down to next is division games, how you play in the division. So you guys down the stretch here with a game against Arizona, with a game against I believe it's the Rams. Rams coming up in Arizona. If you guys
play the
Rams, those Rams this upcoming week, correct, and then Arizona at the end of the season.
We get Rams and Arizona to kind of sandwich these last 4 games, but then in the middle are 2 games that should definitely help us power forward to win out, which are we play the Lions and Bears both at home. So if we can get momentum and be able to have the fans loud, and if we can go in there and preferably just trounce them, get real steam building into week 18, where we're like, okay, at that point, if we had won the last 3 games, we'd be on a 5-game win streak. We'd be 8-8 going into Arizona. We could go in and really, use everything that's built up into this final game to try to make that push. Obviously, like we said, there's a lot of stuff kind of falling around the Seahawks and maybe even the 49ers if they lose a couple games. And there's going to be a lot of stuff falling around them, and it's going to have to fall in the right place. It can happen sometimes. You just got to keep our fingers crossed, I guess, because frankly, I think it'd be really dope to see 4 NFC West teams in the playoffs. I think that would be 100%. Freaking crazy. The feuds on Twitter would be absolutely monstrous.
It would be nuts, dude. It would be absolutely nuts.
I still have mental and physical scars from when the Rams beat us, and Rams fans were just, oh Lord Jesus. It was, they were just landing them.
I have to bring this up because I was looking at it and crunching some numbers, and I was looking at stuff because it would be really, it's no matter what happens with Seattle right now, it's going to be tight making the playoffs. But the scenario I brought up in which Philadelphia is able to knock out Washington twice, which essentially takes them out of the playoff picture and conversation entirely in and of itself. Seattle wins out all of their last 4 games. the Philadelphia Eagles, if they were to go 2-2 during that stretch, so beat Washington twice and then lose their other two NFC East games, the Seattle Seahawks and Philadelphia Eagles would finish with the same record. They would have not played each other in the regular season, so there's no head-to-head game to go against there. Mm-hmm. They will finish with the same division record, meaning they have the same amount of wins in the division, and they will finish with the same NFC record with 6 wins against NFC opponents.
What are they doing that? Do they do like a dice roll, a coin flip?
It might be a coin flip. It might actually be a coin flip.
That would be
absolutely
the spectacle of the century. Like NFL, like we're going live in 15 minutes. Roger Goodell's flipping the coin.
The flip of the flip. And Pete Carroll and Nick Sirianni, please step up to the podium.
Yeah, they're sitting there. They're like, come on, and then
Seattle, you have the longest winning streak of the teams here at 6 games here to finish the season. I really want to see what would they default to there, because obviously they're not going to have like a baseball 163 game. They're not going to do something like that where they're like, all right, go play an extra game, see who wins, and we'll send the winner out into the playoffs. You know, they can't do that. I don't know. It might come down. It might actually come down to something where it's like, all right, who has the most wins consecutively coming into this? Who had the best final month? And if the Seahawks do in fact win out, that would obviously work in our favor. So I don't know. I think I'm not going to speculate. So what I'm looking at here is for 2 clubs, before they go to a coin toss, there are a host of things. So the next thing on the list that would affect both teams is best won-loss tied percentage in common games. So for you guys, it's about net for both teams, because both teams have had about the similar record. They've played the same amount of roughly the similar teams and have done about the same against both of those teams. So that I don't know if that would sway one way or the other. Strength of victory, I'm seeing here. Strength of schedule after that.
Strength of victory would be that's really. Are they looking at point differential there? What the strength of victory? Because it could mean like average amount of points that you win by in your wins.
Could be that,
or it could be
points scored versus points allowed.
Points scored versus points allowed as well, which would also happen to work in the Seahawks' favor because we have a ironically great scoring defense. We have a great scoring defense. Yards, we're terrible. We're like the worst in the NFL in yards, but we have like the 5th best scoring defense. So, you know, there's a lot of things like if it does come down to a coin toss, that would be absolute anarchy. Because with Philadelphia, if Philadelphia misses the playoffs on a coin toss, they'll burn the city. They'll storm the NFL facilities and they will set it ablaze. They will. Like, I don't know if they'd be willing to do that. They wouldn't even test it.
Full anarchy, man.
Yeah, they'll be like, anarchy. They might just sit Goodell and all the NFL owners in a room besides the Eagles and the Seahawks and just be like, what city's people are the most dangerous? That's what we have to think about here. That's what we have to consider. So
it's true, man. It really is true.
Which we would also happen to win in. So,
oh yes,
we have a lot of tiebreakers going our way. So, I mean, I don't want to speculate too much on what would happen if a unicorn situation were to occur, but it is fun. It is fun.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, the Seahawks outlook, I wouldn't say it's positive, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily negative either, looking at the final games and what could play into our favor in the long run. Those losses versus the Vikings and Washington do hurt a lot. They sting
100%. Really bad.
And I'm sure in week 3, when we were playing Minnesota, I wouldn't imagine us being 5-8 at this point and, kind of fighting for our lives. And it comes down to a tiebreaker with the Vikings, but hey, hindsight's 2020. And, I don't know, man. It's going to be fun. It really is going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy these last few weeks. Cause if we miss the playoffs, I'll be somber for like a few days. And then I realize, well, there's no more stress. I can just watch NFL playoff games. Or if we win, I can stress out like crazy and hope my team wins in the playoffs. So fun stuff there. Fun talk. I want to talk about what happened in your game. I want to talk about what happened in your game. I want to get your thoughts on that because it was fun. I want to kind of hear what you have to say.
It was obvious. I mean, look, for football fans, right? If you're a football fan, you enjoy the game, you watch that game, you're like, wow, what an entertaining Like, what an entertaining game. Both teams didn't necessarily play like their best. They didn't play like perfect. But man, it was entertaining. It went down to the wire. The Bengals go down in overtime and actually put points up on the board and put the onus on 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo. And then Jimmy Garoppolo comes down and answers. This is now 3 drives at the end of games in the last 2 weeks that Jimmy Garoppolo has taken the team down the field and given them a very good opportunity to win a football game. Dunlap, 2 weeks ago, does a great job of getting into Compton and then getting his 6'7" body up in space and batting the ball down. This last week against the Bengals, Jimmy gets us into prime field position with 2 amazing throws, and Gold pushes one. Or actually doesn't even technically push it. He hits what I thought was a dagger game winner. Like I stood up, hands are up in the air, like, all right, there it is, baby. Wait a minute, where's that thing going? And as it flies off, over to the right. But then he answers. He goes down the field. He again operates this offense. There's something about Jimmy Garoppolo, man, when there is just no time for him to think, when he just needs to get up to the line of scrimmage, go, time's ticking, clock's winding down, pressure's on, his back is against the wall. He's got like ice in his veins, but it's not ice in his veins because it's one of those things where he's prone to make mistakes, but he's able to just get past it. He's able to move past things. He almost threw a game-ending interception on that game-winning drive. It was close.
Yeah, I saw that. It was very, very close.
The 49ers fans cringed.
I as a Seahawks fan, I watched it and I had that like initial like, oh yeah, like instinct reaction.
And it's cover one robber, dude. It's always the cover one robber where they drop the safety down, they bring him down and show him, they drop him back, and then he comes back down in space. Jimmy misses him. Jimmy sees him dropping back, and he's like, all right, we got cover 2. All right, we got cover 4.
I will say, I cannot believe Jesse Bates dropped that football. I can't believe it.
I'm happy.
For those who are like real football fans, know that Jesse Bates is one of the best ball hawk safeties in the NFL.
Yes, he is. He's very, very good. Very good.
He dropped it, and he was running back, and he like he really shook it off. He was like, he was smiling and stuff. But like, if I were him, I'd be just staring at my hands. Like, how could I? That was a gift. It was a pick six, probably. It was probably a pick six.
You don't even have to six it because at that point you've already kicked your field goal. It's just game over. So just go down and celebrate a big win. But he gifted us one, and Jimmy bounced back. This is what Jimmy does though. When Jimmy makes a bad throw, he bounces back. But the game was interesting just because this was an 49ers what they've been the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks game. You didn't have the running game. It was going to have to come down to Jimmy Garoppolo. The storyline coming out of this that, if you're not a 49ers fan, most people don't realize this. The last time that Jimmy Garoppolo threw over 40 pass attempts and won a football game was 2019 against the Saints.
I remember that game.
In week 13.
Also happened to feature a George Kittle masterclass as well.
Absolutely. I mean, Jimmy just plays better as a quarterback when George Kittle's on the field. Who would have thunk that? What a surprise.
I mean,
this
he really
just operates better too.
He really is a safety blanket. Like he could just throw it to him in his general vicinity and he'll at least go up and try to make a play for it and make a really physical move for that ball. I mean, because he really is great at the contested catch and those catches that you're like, no way he gets this one. And you throw it to him and he has a very physical way of doing things so he can box the defender out. He can manage to just get his hands higher or, kind of outhand the guy for the ball. So that happens a lot. And having a guy like that who's really good at blocking is a great spark plug for your team and also is just a great player and great in the receiving game. That really is going to benefit in the long run going down the line in these games where it's going to
100%.
Yeah.
1,000%. Man.
He's really, he's a special player because he's the only tight end. Cause Gronk was a solid blocker, but he wasn't like an amazing blocker. George Kittle is like an old line talent kind of blocker. And that is really something that I don't remember seeing in recent history because it's either you're a great receiving tight end or you're okay at both or you're a great blocking tight end. This is like the man can catch like crazy and he also happens to just pancake Von Miller at points in the season. So
yeah, it's always good.
It's
always good, man.
It's always great.
But I'm excited. I'm excited about this weekend for not just my team, but the entirety of the NFC West. It's a big week. You guys having your matchup in your game against the Rams is huge for the 49ers for a variety of reasons. Number one, we're a game back of the Rams there for that number 5 overall seed. But with the Cardinals loss, with the Cardinals losing, there's only a couple of games there. I mean, they are now sitting in a position where, if they don't win some football games, they may not be the 1 seed. They may be going on the road. There's things and questions there now for the Cardinals. So pressure is on for everyone in the NFC West. Seattle, your playoff hopes are on the line. One loss can knock you out completely. The Los Angeles Rams, if you don't keep winning, if you lose some football games, then you could find yourself inching closer and closer to being in the muck with everybody else. So that's not a positive thing. That's not a good thing there. They need to stay on top of their game and keep doing what they're doing. Because if the Rams lose one more game, if the Niners win out and the Rams lose one, going into that Week 18 matchup, a win against the Rams in Los Angeles would give the Niners the same record as the Rams and the tiebreaker head up, and that would push them and vault them into that 5th seed. And I don't think there's any team in the NFC right now that wouldn't love a first-round game against an NFC East team. I think everyone would love a first-round NFC East matchup.
Even Dallas would be like it's
Please.
Probably the easiest setup of any game, because you definitely don't want to play Arizona, especially if they can get JJ Watt back down the stretch, which might happen. You don't want to play Green Bay, go to Green Bay in the winter. That is miserable.
Unless you're the 49ers, who have for some reason in years past had a lot of success doing that.
Really?
Like
the Seahawks?
I don't understand it, but they've had success.
It's so weird. The Seahawks have always beat Green Bay in Seattle, and whenever we go to Green Bay, we just can't win. We can't do it. I don't know what it is. It's something that
Lambeau's tough, man. Lambeau's a tough place.
It's a special environment.
It really is.
It's the only environment where it's kind of like that. But and who would be the other team? The Bucks. You don't want to play Tom Brady in the playoffs. It's that simple. You don't want to play Tom Brady in the playoffs.
You don't. I mean, not typically. No. I think. And listen,
if anybody knows,
I'm one of these guys who looks at Tampa Bay and doesn't see. I don't see a Super Bowl team when I look at Tampa Bay. I see a lot of issues.
I feel that
their secondary.
Their secondary.
I see a lot of issues with the secondary. I see an O-line that has played extremely, extremely well, but is getting a little worn down, and Tom is starting to get some pressures on him. That's something we haven't seen recently, and this is it's the worst time for your O-line to start to look like it's faltering at the end of the season, because there is no break. There's no break coming unless you get a bye. So that's the only thing I am worried about, is if Tampa Bay gets the 1 seed, they get that bye, they get some time to recover a little bit and get healthy.
I mean,
but it's gonna be interesting no matter what, because NFC and AFC, everything is. I mean, it is tight. The AFC is in a very similar situation where you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 teams. Excuse me. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 teams all within a game of each other. In the top portion for division leads, and then you also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams. All within 1 to 2 games of each other, and they all have opponents that they have to play against. They all have to play each other. The Bengals went from solidly in the playoffs to losing and now being a game out of the playoffs. You have the Patriots, the Titans, and the Chiefs. Think about that. Patriots, Titans, and Chiefs in the AFC. All of them sitting at 9-4 and fighting for the 1 seed. That's 3 odd teams. 3 odd teams sitting there at the potential 1 seed.
I have a fun question for you. Let's assume that people have been saying that there's a chance Derrick Henry can get back for a late playoff run if the Titans make it that far. There's people
don't do it. Don't mess with Liz Frank fractures, dude. Don't do it.
Yeah, I know. I think I've seen guys come back from like torn plantar fascia and stuff. Don't mess with foot injuries. It never works.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, I've watched countless careers be ruined by Liz Frank fractures throughout my life. There's very few Liz Frank fractures that heal properly the first time. So you're looking at something, if you rush it back just a little too early, you could set yourself back a whole other year. I mean, talk about missing Derrick Henry for a good chunk of this year. If he comes back too early, plays, and does it again, you're missing all of next year.
Yep. That's major. But, if you had to play one of those teams, if Derrick Henry somehow comes back and he's fine,
that's a scary team to play.
It's a hypothetical. Which one of those three teams would you rather play in the Super Bowl? The Patriots
in a Super Bowl.
Let's say you have a miraculous run. The Patriots are hot right now. They're hot. They're on fire. And Mac Jones is playing very confident, which Mac Jones is definitely the least scary quarterback out of the three. But when quarterback getting confident and you got Bill Belichick in the playoffs, that's very nice to have. And then you have the Titans, presuming that somehow Derrick Henry comes back and he's fine. And then the Chiefs, who have won 6 straight games, which has kind of flown under the radar a little bit. But the Chiefs have won 6 straight games and absolutely gave it to the Raiders this week. I think it was 49-6 or something.
It was bad. It was bad. The best part is we had some Raiders fans coming on the podcast and being like, I don't even know why you guys are talking about your 40 whiners. They're not any good. They're not going to make the playoffs. And the Raiders aren't losing another game on their way to the Super Bowl. And I was like, they got a pretty tough one this weekend. He's all, we're going to kill them. And then they got killed. It's like, that's a big yikes. That wasn't good for them. But look, of those 3 teams, oh man, it's tough. That's tough. I think the fan in me says Kansas City because you want 2019 revenge.
Oh, you want that rematch? Yeah.
You want the revenge. You want the rematch. Like if you're gonna get it right, if we're gonna get that Super Bowl, I want to take it from KC. I want to take it back. Like, hey, that was ours. Let's go earn it. Let's go get it now.
And hey, we can go back and get that goddamn Super Bowl from the Patriots. All right, they still have that Lombardi. It's
true.
That Lombardi, which is just about a third of the distance of what we needed to get to that end zone and win the Super Bowl. I'm not gonna lie to you.
As much as I despised the Patriots and everything about that team, all the success, I got blocked. I got blocked after that Super Bowl by Richard Sherman on Twitter because I kept.
And then he joined your team.
I didn't spam him, but I joined your team. I know, but he sent something. He sent something and sent over. I sent him the GIF of his face, on that pic because he looked the look of absolute depression, and I got blocked. And when he came over to San Francisco, my buddies messaged him on Twitter and said, "Hey, you blocked our boy back in the day because of the Super Bowl." So he unblocked me and sent me a little it's all love, and I was like, I know, man. It was just you played for our hated rival. It was. Yeah, it was just comeuppance time. That's all it was at that moment. It was just comeuppance time.
Yeah,
look, I want to get your take on this because this Rams game that just happened with the Cardinals. A lot of people look at Arizona and have seen a kind of an infallible team, and I know Evan feels that way. At times he did, and then at times he didn't. Evan has always been a very realistic Cardinals fan, waiting for the other shoe to drop. They have a big loss. Kyler throws 2 turnovers, and ironically enough, the reason why he's not here, he was at the game with his dad. It was his dad's first ever game, and he got to go watch. So shout out to them. I wish it had played out a little bit differently for the both of you. But
I wish it would have played out different too. Trust me. I wish it would have played out different.
As a 49ers fan who wanted the Rams to lose, that the Niners would be really close to the Rams, I would have preferred it there. But as someone who also, we have picks on our channel, and as someone who picked the Rams, I appreciate the Rams beating the Cardinals and giving me sole possession of first place. I'm just saying, I wanted to have it both ways. I can't. But how are you feeling coming out of this game about the Cardinals? Not necessarily the Rams, because the Rams got a lot of COVID stuff they're dealing with now, but the Cardinals, did the Rams show basically a method to beat the Arizona Cardinals because they weren't 100% healthy? No Jalen Ramsey out there, no ability, or is the injury to DeAndre Hopkins significant enough to maybe stifle and slow down that offense a little bit?
There was moments yesterday where I saw the Cardinals and I'm like, what is this? What is this team? Because I'm watching this and the offense, they're getting down there, but they're just not making the plays that matter. I felt like at some points they were making the plays that were, oh yeah, that's an impressive throw to AJ Green, or that's an impressive run by Kyler. But when it comes down to it, you have to make the plays that count. And that D-Hop drop was kind of the moment where like you felt like that's what is gonna make this game go completely towards the Rams. And I really was, and I know that obviously Aaron Donald is Aaron Donald, but that interior O-line is a issue. It's a real issue. And you want to talk about interior O-line being a problem for a team? When you have Kyler Murray, who maybe isn't much taller than me sitting down right now, when you have him lining up behind those guys and you have a O-lineman getting pushed into you and you have to roll out and make plays. Sure, he makes plays there, but it'll result in a lot of sacks. And especially if we're getting towards the playoffs where we look at who they might be playing in a big game. If you play the Bucks, guess who's coming up the middle? You got Vita Vea, who is a man eater. He's a mauler and he will get in your face. If you play the Packers, you're going to have Kenny Clark, who is a big boy. He's a big boy. And I know that he might be injured, but I think he might come back in time. Not sure. I'll fact check that. But
no worries.
Yeah. And even if you play a team like or LA, who we just saw last night, Aaron Donald absolutely ate the interior offensive lineman's lunch last night. I mean, they got absolutely pummeled into the ground. And then you're talking about maybe even playing San Francisco, who could, use some versatility with a guy like Eric Armstead, who is big enough to play on the interior and can play on the interior if he's ever needed. I don't know. I think Arizona's still a very good team. I think that at full strength, they're very talented and they might be the best team in the NFC. They might be. I'm not confident to say outright that they are the best team in the NFC because we kind of saw what the Rams looked like at full strength last night. And they were great. They were really great. And they didn't even have Jalen Ramsey or Darrell Henderson or Rob Havenstein. None of those guys were on the field, or Tyler Higbee. And yet the offense continued to move the ball. Matt Stafford, man, when Matt Stafford's on point, that Rams offense is deadly. And that connection between Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford has really flourished. And it's something that is borderline impossible to stop because Cooper Kupp is so physical and so great at getting open. And then this defense, when you have Jalen Ramsey, who can basically take an entire wide receiver out of the game just by lining up across from him. And then you have Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Von Miller. It can get really dangerous with the Rams if they can get hot. And if Matt Stafford can pick up his play, he's been playing pretty poorly the last 5 weeks altogether. He'd played pretty poorly. He had a really rough game versus Green Bay. He also lost a couple games. I can't remember. I think he lost to San Francisco.
He played absolutely terrible against the Niners.
Yeah, he lost to San Francisco, and then they lost to a team in between that, and I don't remember exactly who it is. Tennessee, where he threw like 2 picks or whatever.
2 picks in the red zone. He threw a pick six and an interception that essentially should have been a pick six.
Yeah, I mean,
well, it should have been.
So the Rams are weak. The Rams are beatable. I don't think I've ever seen a team that I would consider a serious contender have so many flaws that they've put on tape, because there's a lot of issues with the Rams. Their interior O-line is not good.
It is bad. It's
bad. And
really
it's really not a good interior offensive line. Their run game, I would consider also pretty weak. You're talking, and the defense at times has not played up to the standard that they played last year. And they've tended to give up a lot of points, a lot of yards. So the Rams have a lot of issues. The Cardinals, I feel like, are still the best team in the NFC West at full strength. You brought up a valid point about DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know where he's at right now. He's not right, because
he looks hobbled. Yeah.
Kyler Murray was throwing to AJ Green, and he was making stuff happen last night. AJ Green, he looked really nice. He looked really good. Something I did not expect out of a guy like AJ Green, who I thought was pretty much a veteran addition to replace the classic old veteran role that was Larry Fitzgerald. But yeah, I mean, I don't know where D-Hop is at right now. I don't know where the Cardinals are at. And I don't know how they're going to respond. And that's the main question that we're going to see this week. How do they play? How do they respond? Because that's how you tell what a contender is from a pretender.
Well, here's the good news, right? If you're the Cardinals, the good news, it's the Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions are a team who is playing very inspired football.
They are.
They just got their first win. You know, they are a team who has been playing tough against everyone all season. Dan Campbell has that group believing, despite the lack of talent and everything else. You know, there's a lot of positive things there for that football team. But the Cardinals now are going to be wanting to make a statement. They're going to want to make a statement. And they need to. I think the thing I've seen consistently now from the Cardinals the last 3 or 4 weeks that makes me believe that they're human, that they're beatable, is the run game. Yes, they put up some gaudy rush numbers. However, if you look at their running backs right now, over the last, I think, 3 or 4 games, Connor has only been averaging like 3 yards a carry, 2.8 a carry. They're low. That's high volume, low yardage. So if he is going to be doing that consistently, if that's what the run game starts to look like, then the onus becomes completely on Kyler Murray to drop back to pass 60, 70 times a game. You know, or maybe not 60 or 70, but maybe 50 to 60 times a game in which he scrambles 8 or 10 times off of that. So he ends up only throwing 40 passes. That's a lot of onus to put on him with a hobbled DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to be having to go out and run a bunch of routes, with a young Rondale Moore, who has shown flashes, but has also shown that, you know, at times he's just not being utilized, or teams are scheming and taking things away from him and taking away maybe a limited route tree. I'm not 100% sure. And AJ Green and Kyler maybe necessarily aren't on the same page yet. They're not there. They haven't developed that chemistry. Christian Kirk has had success. Ertz has had success. There's a lot of weapons, a lot of pieces, definitely. But if you're just going to drop back and pass, it makes teams pass rush. It gives them an opportunity to just pin their ears back and go. So the Cardinals can solve a lot of their own problems right now by running the football better, being efficient with running the football. It's not just for them about rushing 20 times to rush 20 times and keep a defense soft, but make sure that you're getting some positive yards and gashing some. Because if you can, then you're going to open the game up everywhere else, and it's going to make life easier for Kyler Murray. But we'll see. We'll see what exactly happens. I'm in the same boat as you. The Cardinals are still the best team in the NFC West, and they may still be the best team in the NFC. I'm not even willing after a loss that ended up being close that really wasn't that close. It was closer than what the game indicated because of the onside kick and the late score.
On the stat sheet, it appears closer than it was. But when you're watching the game, the Rams controlled it basically from start to finish. And tracing back to what you said about their run game, the Rams won the game in the trenches, especially on defense, where Connor was not getting anything up the middle. They made him grind for every yard, and nothing happened all night for them on the run game. So if that's something that becomes a problem down the line, especially, like I said, in these big games where if you have to go and play Green Bay in Lambeau, you're from Arizona and you're an indoor team. Let's say you're playing from indoors, going to Lambeau the next week or in the conference championship game, and you're talking about 20 degrees, windy, cold. I don't know. And that's where games are going to be won in the trenches. And if your run game is dead for those games, I don't know how Kyler Murray especially is going to do, especially when you're talking about a guy who A, has never been there, and B, I don't think has played in a cold weather in his entire life. I think he grew up in Texas, committed to Texas A&M, then went to Oklahoma, then went to Arizona.
Maybe.
I mean, it's a valid argument, and it's something that I don't know how he's gonna
think about that,
combat it. And it's something.
It's definitely something to think about. 100%.
It's something to think about.
It is.
I know. Like a lot of Cardinals fans will argue that I'm kind of nitpicky, but when you're talking about these juggernauts of conferences, and it comes down to that game that you have to win in a certain situation, how can you win it? You really have to take everything into account, and that's one thing that you don't know how he's going to do. I know that Russell Wilson as hell doesn't do well in it. So,
especially right now with the finger, right? He's been struggling in cold weather climates with the finger. Here's the other thing too. For Cardinals fans who may be upset about something like that, or two non-Cardinals fans nitpicking about the Cardinals, there's a reason we're nitpicking against the Cardinals, right? Because the Cardinals are good. They're a good football team. You have to nitpick a good football team because there's not a lot of weaknesses, right? There's not a lot of areas for me to go, not good, they suck, he sucks, he's not that good, this team isn't that good. This is a good football team. It's a good football team with a lot of good pieces that Cliff Kingsbury's done a lot of good things with. You know, I jokingly was watching that game the other night, that Monday night game, and saw Cliff Kingsbury not covering his mouth to call the plays with his play sheet and said, oh, Bill Belichick right now is watching this, just being like, oh yeah, give me Cliff in the Super Bowl.
Matt LaFleur.
I'm just gonna stick a guy up in the booth with a pair of binoculars and a lip reader who can translate. We're just gonna translate all your play calls pre-snap and let everyone know what you're doing, what your concept is. And it's the little thing. It's the little detail. Little details matter. Like little details have to matter, especially for a team like Arizona, who, like you said, hasn't been there with this group. This group hasn't been there. They have pieces on the roster who have been there, and that can help supplement. 2019 is a perfect example of that. That Niners team had not been there. Mm-hmm. They had not been to a playoff. They had not been in the playoffs, and they had pieces that had played in playoff games and had been. I mean, Joe Staley was in that first Super Bowl. You had some guys Richard Sherman had played in Super Bowls. So you had guys who were around, were on the roster, and they could supplement some of that experience, and it worked out. But that's not always the case. You know, I've always said this about that 2019 Niners team. That 2019 Niners team bucked the trend for what young teams typically do when they're starting to become like, you know, a team that's supposed to be a formidable force. You're supposed to take lumps. You're supposed to lose games that you're supposed to win. You're supposed to struggle. You're supposed to have adversity, which is why personally as a fan this year, as tough as it's been to watch the 49ers, I believe this team is really good. So watching them have to deal with adversity actually makes me feel like when the time comes, when the games matter the most in the playoffs, if you get there, you're going to be a team that is completely ready. You've been to a Super Bowl, you know what it takes, and now you've dealt with the adversity. You've dealt with those obstacles the last 2 years and have overcome them to put yourself in a position to get back there. I think the Niners would be a very dangerous team come playoff time. You know, I will say when they get there, and a lot of people will say if they get there, and we're both right. When we get there and if we get there, I think they're going to be a tough out for anyone, no matter who it is. And I think there's a lot of teams in the NFL right now, especially the NFC, that are like, hey, you know what we'd rather not do? Let's not play San Francisco.
Yeah. And the 49ers are getting genuinely hot. George Kittle is on a tear. His last 2 games, I think he has like 350 something yards.
Yeah, it's close to 402 games, man. It's nuts.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's something that is kind of hard to believe. But Jimmy G, man. Jimmy freaking G. Last year, I was like, man, I don't know who this is, but he's not there. And now, all of a sudden, he is alive, and he's making plays. Now, when it comes playoff time, will he be gifted Jesse Bates who dropped interceptions? I don't know.
You can't count on this.
Especially because the Bengals play in the AFC. But, you know, off topic.
Can't count on them.
Yeah, but I'm not going to like get super nitpicky here. I really think the 49ers are a dangerous team. They have been there, and they have guys, and they are talented. They're just genuinely talented.
This is, I mean, the roster, it's not the same exact roster that made it in 2019, but the key players are. The key players are all the same key players that were there in 2019, with the exception of your corners. Your corners are different, and pretty much everything else is the same. These were guys who were all there. They all ran through with that roster. They went through with the pieces. You know, the only differences are Brandon Ayuk, Elijah Mitchell instead of Raheem Mostert. But pretty much everywhere else, some of the line pieces have changed a little bit. Trent Williams instead of Joe Staley, Brunskill instead of Person, excuse me. So there are some minor differences, minor tweaks, but for the most part, it's the same group. So I feel like this is a dangerous team. But Seattle, if they get hot at the right time and you win out like these games, you guys will become very dangerous because it's Russell freaking Wilson and it's Bobby freaking Wagner.
And
you know,
Russ is getting warm. Russ is getting warm. He's heating up
a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? He had a moon ball versus the Texans, man. It was it was something to behold as a Seahawks fan. It was really something to behold because
something to cringe at as a Niner fan. You hate to see it.
I didn't know if I was going to see another one of those this year. I was kind of worried. I was genuinely worried. Now that it's happened, I never admit that I'm worried about something really, like, until it happens.
You're a humble man. You wait.
I was worried. I was really worried that Russ wasn't going to be right for the rest of the season. And now he's had back-to-back great weeks. Sure, against teams with corners who I would consider to be less than ideal at some points, especially when you got, Tyler Lockett lining up versus Josh Norman. It's something, and
it still stings.
Yeah, and that's something that I really wanted to ask you is Josh Norman your cornerback 1 or 2? Just kind of how he lines up and how he plays wide receivers.
Well, I mean, he's supposed to be number 2. Unfortunately, Emmanuel Moseley went down early in that game, and the minute that happened, the Niners were scrambling. They went to Diamado Lenore, and Diamado Lenore is a rookie who early in the season played very admirably while Emmanuel Moseley was out, but very quickly showed why he's a rookie and probably shouldn't be on the field quite yet as a 5th-round pick. So then they went to Dante Johnson, who played phenomenally the rest of that game. The problem is that the Niners basically had started having Norman follow. They have him follow on certain series. He would follow DK on certain series. He would follow Lockett around and was playing on sides of the field that he normally doesn't play on. And Josh Norman is not the type of guy who consistently wins one-on-one. So you can ask him to play one-on-one occasionally, and sometimes he will. He'll play well, and sometimes he won't, and sometimes he'll get a deep defensive pass interference. Sometimes he just gets a hold. He's a wild card.
Yeah.
He does cause a lot of turnovers. So there's that. I mean, he forces a bunch of fumbles.
Yeah.
I think he's one away from the franchise record for the 49ers for fumbles in a season, and he's only been on the roster for like 10 or 11 weeks. I mean, it's been nuts.
That's great.
It's crazy. So he's supposed to be cornerback 2 because Mosley's supposed to be 1. And the ideal situation last week was to essentially, when Mosley had DK one-on-one, let him ISO and man up and match up because he's played DK typically pretty well in the past.
Yeah.
And then roll coverage over when Norman has Lockett. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. So you had Lockett on Norman, and you can't roll coverage over because Diamado Lenore has big old DK Metcalf over there, and there's no way he's going to stay with him. And then after a couple of those big catches, Diamado Lenore just kind of shrunk in the moment. He really did. He got burned by Dwayne Eskridge on a route in which Dwayne Eskridge sat down in space in the red zone, was open. But Diamado Lenore had no other person in his zone, nothing else to worry about, and he backpedaled his way into the end zone for some reason, and waited for Russ to deliver the ball to Dwayne Eskridge, and then he did. And then he came down in space and didn't break down and got beat inside, and Eskridge walked in for a touchdown. And it was just like, I remember watching it live and being like, oh, man, you got to make that tackle. And then we watched the old 22 film, and I was like, get him off the field. Don't put him back out there. He's not ready. Like, the moment is just too big, and that's okay. He's a 5th-round pick. I expect him to make mistakes, and he's shown a lot of good things and flashes. But the Niners, rolled this last week against the Bengals with Ambry Thomas, their 3rd-round pick, who hadn't seen the field at all this year other than special teams. And a lot of people are like, well, he did great this week, and he did serviceable. It was serviceable.
I saw some points where he did kind of have trouble. I did recognize he was on the field. Because usually when the Seahawks and 49ers and the Rams and all them, they usually play at the same times because it is all the 4 o'clock window. So I'm kind of, or at least for me, it's the 4 o'clock window. So I'm kind of always watching those. And I'm usually never really paying super close attention because I'm on my phone trying to see what's happening with the Seahawks and trying to see what's happening with all that. But this week, when I really got a chance to sit down and watch what the 49ers can do, I did see Ambry Thomas out there. He had some moments where I was like, okay, I did remember when you guys picked him in the 3rd round. And I was like, I had him on my radar as like maybe like a later guy for the Seahawks. I liked his potential as a corner, and Pete Carroll loves his corners. He loves he loves kind of his bigger corners, man. Let me tell you. And I thought that Ambry Thomas would have been a guy who could have been there. You guys picked him in the 3rd round. I'm like, oh. I was like, that's an interesting pick.
It was a big swerve. The Niners, the day one of their draft was a home run because of Trey Lance. You shored up your quarterback position.
Yeah.
You gave up a lot, but now if something happens to Jimmy, you have someone back there, you're like, this guy can make plays. He's got a big arm. There's a lot of, the sky's the limit for Trey Lance. Okay,
lots
great.
like.
Day 2 was 2 things. They were always going to trade. They were always planning to trade up twice in the second round. And that was the goal, was to trade up and get 2 things. They wanted to get themselves a potential swing tackle / guy who could play guard, and they wanted to get themselves a corner. That's what they wanted.
You got the guy from Notre Dame in the second round. I know that.
So they traded up. They traded up in that second round to draft Walker Little out of Stanford. But they missed him by 2 picks. So he went 2 picks before. So what did they do? They traded. Well, they didn't trade back. They didn't trade up. They sat at their pick. Walker Little went 2 picks before them in the second. So they traded back in the second round. Once that happened, and they traded back to a spot where they thought that they were going to potentially get, I forget who. Oh no, they didn't trade back to him. They traded back to grab extra capital. That's what it was. They traded back for extra capital. They took Aaron Banks there in the second round.
Yes.
And then they traded up in the third round to try and grab, I believe it was Paulson Adebo from Stanford.
Yes. Another guy who I had on my radar for the Seahawks.
The Saints traded up 2 spots above the Niners.
Oof.
And took Paulson Adebo, and he's been playing absolutely phenomenally for the Saints.
That hurts.
In the presser after, they asked them about the moves, what they did in the second round. They said, in all honesty, we were just kind of scrambling day 2. We were scrambling. We were targeting a couple guys. We didn't get them. And he said, John Lynch literally, he straight up said, because before the draft, we said, be aggressive, go get the guys you want. And Ant and I both were like, if Paulson Adebo is available in round 2, just take him. Just take him. Don't sit and wait. Don't try and get the best. Just grab him, because you can start day 1 if you need him to. And if Jason Verrett's fine and Emmanuel Mosley's fine, then you have the future at the cornerback position there at cornerback 3 in case there's an injury. Just get him. Get him in day 2 and I'll be happy. They were a little less aggressive than I wanted them to be. And John Lynch in the presser afterwards says we were targeting Paulson Adebo. The Saints got aggressive and went up, took him. And once they did that, we were just kind of trying to salvage our day 2. And it was just like, gosh darn it. Darn it. Frustrating. Because, we're seeing it now. The Verrett injury, the Mosley injury, it's hampered the secondary. It has.
It's all kind of aged. And once again, we always say hindsight's 2020. I'm sure that if Jason Verrett and Emmanuel Mosley were healthy right now, you could say, well, we have a great project to work on with Ambry Thomas, a guy who has a ton of potential, and a guy who could step in eventually. But now when you're talking about trying to make a playoff push, there you go, bud. Let's get on the field. Let's go. I need you to guard Jamar Chase for me. I need you to guard. All these great receivers.
T. Higgins.
T. Higgins too.
Let's go get T. Higgins.
Yeah, and don't worry. Your fallback option is Josh Norman. So don't worry.
I gotta say,
if you're struggling on the wide receiver 1, throw in Josh Norman. Everything's great.
Could be worse. It could be worse. So last thing, let's wrap this thing up. Last thing, Jamal Adams. You guys gave up a lot for him. You signed him to a big contract. He's out for the year for now the second straight season. Is it the same shoulder? Is it the same shoulder that he's dealing with?
It is the same shoulder.
How worried are you as a Seahawks fan now?
It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. It's something that really, really hurt, because Jamal Adams maybe had his best. He was playing really well. He was finally, I think the Seahawks found how to use him. They realized we don't have to blitz him for him to be an effective player on this team. We don't have to blitz him. We don't have to send him 15 times a game. We could send him 3 times a game and bring him when it matters. And he was playing well in coverage. He was playing well just overall. And it really hurt when he went down, because I heard it was a shoulder. It was like, yikes, but maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's okay. And I hear torn labrum. Torn labrum. And then I hear same shoulder, torn labrum, which means back-to-back years where he has torn the labrum, I believe in his right shoulder, against the 49ers. It really sucks. It really sucks. And
it does. You hate to see anyone get injured, but especially key piece.
Yeah. And Ryan Neal is fine, but I think it was evident immediately how he missed him when, as soon as he leaves, like the second play, George Kittle has like a 40-yard touchdown. That, and Jamal Adams has been the guy who you slap him on the tight end and you have him not necessarily man up, but you have him kind of stay with him. You have him kind of follow him around. And frankly, he was a big reason on why George Kittle was not playing that well in the Week 4 game when we played guys.
Kittle was out that game.
Was he out?
Kittle was out that game. Yeah, that first one. No, you're not dumb. He was supposed to play. He was supposed to play that game, and they put him on IR.
Oh my God! I swear. Oh man, I'm gonna beat up on myself for that one. But listen, I mean,
it's fine because Ross Dwelley scored the opening touchdown on that drive. Yeah. That's the only reason I remember that. Only reason I remember that.
Yeah. Okay, so listen, Jamal Adams is being out. In summary, sucks so bad.
I agree with you on that. It does. Anytime you miss a key secondary piece, it
sucks so bad. He was really getting there, and he was having fun. He had signed a contract, and he brought so much energy. And I think the first thing that Pete Carroll brought up when he got hurt in that press conference was like, we need to find a way on how to replace his energy. That was the thing that he said, because Jamal Adams, he was the kind of guy where if he made a tackle and you got 1 yard, he's running down the sideline, hitting his chest, yelling to his sideline, telling him to get hyped up. And that players fed off that. And especially guys like Bobby Wagner, who would kind of collaborate with him on that and get all the young guys on our team.
Bobby Wagner is playing absolutely phenomenal.
He's playing amazing. He's playing amazing.
I hate it. I hate it with a passion, but gosh darn it, do I respect it.
He's playing very, very well. I mean, and I think he's leading the NFL in tackles by, I think, a solid amount. And I believe I saw somewhere that I think the Seahawks actually tweeted out today that if he has 11 tackles a game for the rest of the year, he'll have the most tackles of any player in the last since the turn of the century. He'll have the most tackles of any player since the turn of the century.
Nuts.
So he's
the nuts season.
He's playing, and somehow we still only have a 2% chance to make the playoffs.
Dude, I'm telling you, it is going to come down to the wire for the Seahawks, but all hope is not lost. At this point, the only thing you guys can do is control what you can control, and that means win your games, win out, and put the onus on the Washington football team, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Minnesota Vikings, the Atlanta Falcons. You put the onus on them. They're the ones that have to screw the pooch. They're the ones that have to have the letdown, and if they do and you don't, we will have 4 NFC West teams in the playoffs. Because the Niners will make
incredible. That would be incredible. Hey, I do agree that the Niners will make the playoffs. I think that things are lining up pretty well for them where they're at right now. It starts
this week, though. It starts this week. If the Niners beat the Falcons, you now have the head-to-head tiebreaker over every team other than the Washington football team.
The Falcons is an interesting game because the Falcons have kind of quietly stayed in it the entire year. And I just saw it last week when they played Carolina, and I'm watching NFL Red Zone, which is a gift from God himself. 100%. And Scott Hansen goes, a game with playoff implications in the NFC, Carolina versus Atlanta. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And I see Atlanta has like 6 wins. I'm like, what the hell is this? I thought
quiet 6.
It's a very silent 6 wins, and it's something where like Matt Ryan has actually been playing pretty okay. The last time I really heard anything about Atlanta was when Calvin Ridley said, I'm taking a mental health break. I don't know how long I'll be gone. And now I was like, at that moment, I'm like, okay, well, you can write off the Falcons. I mean, they lost their best weapon, and now all of a sudden Cordero Patterson wants to just absolutely break out. And then you have Kyle Pitts and everybody else kind of coming together at the same time. But like, anyways, this playoff race for the NFC is absolutely stupid. I don't think I remember anything like it, because usually at this point you see the outline of what's going to happen. Maybe there's like one spot that's in question, or there's like, maybe some like division spots that might be
But
switching.
it's usually like a hand, like 3 teams, maybe two teams.
Like I think
who are battling for one or two spots.
For the 7th seed, it was pretty much just talking about like last year for the 7th seed. Who made it as the 7th seed last year? It was the.
I don't remember. I don't recall. I do not recall who made it as the 7th seed.
I do not remember.
Because you guys were you guys the 5th seed?
I think the 7th seed. No, we were the 3rd seed because we won our division.
You guys won the division last year. You were the 3rd seed.
The Saints were the 2nd seed. So whoever played the Saints. So the Vikings. No, not the Vikings. Was it the Vikings? No, not the Vikings.
I don't think it was the Vikings.
I'll do a quick check on this, but in summary, I mean, how stupid is this NFC playoff race?
Done. It's nuts. It's nuts.
It's something that is kind of unprecedented for the NFL, and it's something that is very much not common. And I want to see somebody do the math on how often has this happened? Where like there's 7 teams who could legitimately make the playoffs right now.
And the crazy part is the scheduling too has it so that there's a lot of huge impactful games happening all at the end of the season. Like there's teams playing teams, Atlanta playing the Niners in a playoff game, for playoff supremacy and opportunity. You guys having to go up against the Cardinals late in the year, the Rams right now. You got to play Chicago as well. I mean, those are all games that Chicago, technically out of the playoff hunt, but again, a team that's played a lot of playoff teams and playoff caliber teams. Then you have the NFC East, all of their games, they're all playing each other over the next 4 weeks.
Yep.
Other than the Cowboys are the only team that have one game that's not an NFC East game. Mm-hmm. The rest of the division, they're all playing NFC East teams to finish off the season. And all of them are in the hunt, with the exception of the Giants. All of them are in the hunt. It's nuts. It's nuts.
It's crazy. I found out what happened last year. It was the Bears that were the 7th seed.
That's why no one remembered. That's why no one remembered.
The only team, so the Bears went 8-8. The only 2 teams that were really in contention for that were the Vikings, who finished 7-9, and the Cardinals, who finished 8-8. And I remember that being relatively I think I remember that pretty obviously in my head that the Cardinals kind of got shellacked by the Rams, and the Vikings, I don't know how they lost, but I don't remember them ever being in it really. But I mean, it's clear that this year is a different season. There's a lot of different changes. There's a lot of weird things, and it might come down to a coin flip. And that's the craziest part about it. And
it very well could.
People of Philadelphia, just lock your doors. Get to an area with no windows, and you should be okay. But
should be all right. Hopefully it doesn't get that bad. It doesn't get that bad. But hey, you were right. The NFC West is getting hot, is getting interesting. A lot of interesting things happening. The playoff picture is not clearer. The closer we're getting, it is even more distorted than I think it's ever been in years past. The NFL has to be loving that. The ratings are going to be through the roof here to finish the season. Sam, always a pleasure having you on. Let everyone know where they can find you.
You can find me at the Always Compete Seahawks Podcast, whether that is on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get them. So I appreciate you having me on. It's going to be fun. These next few weeks are going to be fun.
Going to be an absolute blast. We'll see you next week. Cutback crew, we'll see you as well. The NFC West is definitely heating up, but the playoff race is getting so interesting.